Good afternoon. My name is Fabian Rey. I am going to explain a little about the problem raised in the activity guide. Why is it possible to speak of a philosophy of India and not only of theological thought? I feel that it is possible to speak of a philosophy of India based on what Dr. Devarakonda himself indicated in the video with respect to the system of deep and descriptive philosophical reflection, a deep that is not found in philosophical reflection of other cultures. Mr. Devarakonda indicated that there has existed in India a system of philosophy that has been completely dedicated to the study of the theory of knowledge, called Pramana Sastra, making a distinction between valid knowledge and invalid knowledge. From this conception, we already approach a solid theory of knowledge, which detaches this reflection from a pure theology, and we approach a philosophical system as such, a philosophical reflection. In India, then under this conception, three factors are exposed: Pramana, the means of knowledge; Pramata, the subject of knowledge; and Pramaya, the object of knowledge. Being this a solid and deep theory of knowledge, as indicated by Dr. Devarakonda, since many times, is it not defined or characterized in philosophical process of other cultures? It should be understood that these processes of philosophical reflection in India are very old, dating back to about 5,000 years before Christ, and the appearance of the oldest Vedic text around 1500 years before Christ, generating for Dr. Devarakonda the question of who influenced whom, when the parallel of Western Greek philosophy versus Indian philosophy is made. The philosophical categories of Indian thought present clear concepts evidenced in the interview. The concept of Dharma, approached from a behavioral, universal, natural, physical, and biological order of the individual, is evidenced as a solid ethics where a relationship of the individual is established, first with himself and then with others and everything that surrounds him, nature, the universe, establishing a law of universal order where each sphere is affected in relation to the whole and the individual. Dr. Devarakonda establishes here a similarity with Socratic thought by establishing the care of oneself, knowing oneself, transcending the individual through the practice of virtue, justice, and true knowledge. Under this view, a conception far from mere dogmatic theology is observed, and a philosophical consideration is reflected. Another philosophical category addressed by Dr. de Baraconda is the concept of karma as action, the law of action that manifests itself in the world of matter, in the world of physical form, but impacts the world of the transcendent. Through a conscious practice of the individual, an individual responsible for himself and his actions rise above the cyclical karma of birth, death, and reincarnation. Another philosophical category is the concept of samsara, establishing itself as the cycle of birth and rebirth, suffering and reincarnation under a state of constant unconsciousness that must be transcended. The concept of moksha is also deepened, and Dr. de Baraconda calls it a spiritual liberation, an awareness of the body to rise above karma. Dr. de Baraconda makes a very accurate reflection when he indicated that Indian philosophy should not be observed under the conceptual framework of the Western Eurocentrist philosophy, because completely relevant and substantial elements that allow understanding the Indian philosophical reflection are lost. On the contrary, he invites us to approach it with an open look, with an open mentality that allows understanding its philosophy, science, as Dr. de Baraconda indicated. Each culture in tradition develops its own ethical framework on the basis of which it sustains its tradition and also sustains its ethos. For Dr. de Baraconda, this philosophical tradition called darshana, seeing, is not only reduced to look at the obvious, what is presented in front of you. It is also to see what underlies everything that is presented in the visible world. It is a deep look into oneself and others. And this deep look into oneself and into others, the ontological perspective comes into existence in being world, a concept deeply used in the Vedic tradition of India through its ancient texts. In conclusion, I think it is admissible to contemplate an Indian philosophical and not a reductionist concept to a merely theological conception, based on a conception of the universe, of society, of nature, of politics, of the others, and of one's own reflection as an individual, not limited only to address the idea of God and divinity in indoctrination, but to the reflective process of life, has cosmogony that yearns to set an example and living materially and spiritually.